All right, we're back. It is COMP125. That's client-side web development here at Centennial, and it's summer 2016, and it's week 11, part 3 of our broadcast. We're still talking about jQuery. We're going along with the PowerPoints that I put up online for you. So if you look at the course, and if you look at COMP125, underneath that, there is a PowerPoint under week 11 content, which is right here. So let's talk about what we've already covered, just to make sure that we're good to go on a review. Last time we got together, we just talked about how to get some basic things, what jQuery can do for us, the shortcuts that the library offers us, as well as how can we use jQuery, the jQuery's code hinting when there is no code hinting. And again, I talked about WebStorm, which is another IDE that you can use, a professional level IDE that people use in the industry, as well as typings, which is a tool we can use through NPM to get code hinting for jQuery and other libraries, right? Now, it's important for us to do that because if we don't have code hinting, then it becomes a real challenge to understand what we can do and what we can't do with jQuery. We have to always keep looking at the API reference, which can be a bit of a pain. And that's why I was telling you that, for any kind of library, you want code hinting. You can get it for basic JavaScript, example with Visual Studio Code. It gives you some basic code hinting for JavaScript, and that's good. But for most other libraries is where we use typings. So I'm going to bring up number 11 here. So remember last time we downloaded a bunch of things with Bower. The other thing we talked about was Bower, how to grab jQuery from Bower instead of downloading it on your own. And we talked about what this does, how we have the jQuery symbol, the $, right? It's like saying the $, is an alias for jQuery, right? So think about it as when you see $, say, hey, jQuery, I want to look for this selector which matches CSS, right? This is what I want to look for. Get the text, right? Set the text to hello world. That's what I'm saying. If I didn't have anything in here, it would be a getter, I mean. This is the setter version of this method. Notice that there's several different kinds of overloads. There's 2 overloads for this method, right? And then from a CSS perspective, I want to change the attribute, the color attribute, to red. That's what I'm doing here. This is just, for a reminder of how we did it last time. Key points are when you load your index.html, how you enable things inside your index.html, right, or your files, right? This is the one thing. If you want jQuery enabled, you got to put it in here. Now, here's a challenge, right? If I enable my jQuery down here in my index.html, but I want to use jQuery through all my pages, then I got to go through each of my pages and attach this, right? The challenge of using something like Ajax to load parts of my pages, I'm just putting it out there for you guys again, is, well, we're using Ajax to load scripts, and we're using the scripts to load the Ajax. You can't. It's hard to. You can't break it up that way. So this is the one part for now. You have to kind of use. This is weird. This is not closed. Let me just close this up for a second. I don't know why I left this unclosed. But you can see the error there. There we go. So notice that I have jQuery and jQuery UI, and then jQuery Mobile. I mean, I put them in there so I can show you how they work, how you can set them up. But we're not going to use jQuery Mobile yet. I'm going to copy this thing. And if I go to my pages, then inside each of my pages, like for example, my About page, notice that on the bottom, way on the bottom of my About page, I have just jQuery. I have to put in jQuery UI and jQuery Mobile in here as well because, again, each page has to have references to all the scripts. And that's a real challenge for me, right? Because if I'm just using basic pages and I got to do this for every page, wow, what a pain. Right? So we can use something else, and we will, not today, but I want to introduce to you later on another kind of view engine that I want to use with you, probably called Handlebars. I think I'm going to try and do the Handlebars view engine with you guys. That's my guess. Because otherwise, you can't really do front-end technology without some kind of view engine to help you out, right? Otherwise, we're going to have to do this every page. Every page. Projects, if you notice on the bottom here, I got to add in those scripts too. Let's add them in, right? If we don't have the scripts in, no functionality for what we're doing here. Now, do I need jQuery Mobile or jQuery UI? No. I'm just putting them in there to show you that we'd have to do that for every single page. And that's a problem to me, right? It's not an insurmountable problem. It's not something we can't get around. We can get around it. I'm just pointing it out that it can be a bit of a pain to go through every single page. Let's go back to this. And let's go back to this. So again, as a refresher from last day, you can use a selector to select a tag name by identifier for ID, by class name. You can use different ways of barreling down into that. For example, I can look at things like the value of an object. I did the text. There's the getter and the setter. And you might have methods that have both sides, getter and setter. That's cool. And there's many others. And they give here in the PowerPoint that I put up for you some examples of how to use jQuery in the most common ways. All right, so that's the one thing. And I also went through this slide, which tells you, hey, these are all the things that jQuery can do for us, right, from a filters perspective, right? So jQuery filters 6 different categories. So basic filtration, content, visibility, if I want to make it visible and invisible, different attributes. Talks about child relationships and especially form validation, right? And here's the stuff that we haven't talked about from a filter perspective. Okay, so, and how do I use filters, by the way? Filters look like this, right? So it almost looks like the same filters we use in CSS. There's actually no difference. If you see a CSS filter, it looks exactly like a jQuery filter. So what I mean by that is, well, I only want even rows. That's what this is, table rows, even rows in the table. So example, hey jQuery, get a table that contains a table row, and for every table row, I only want the even table rows. Return that as what I want as my selector. That's what it means, right? Even is the even rows in the table. All right, here's another one. Hey, jQuery, I want a paragraph tag that's contained in another tag that has an ID of facts, right? FAQs, right? And make sure that the third descendant, right? The third 0, 1, 2, the third descendant, right? Inside the paragraph tag, the paragraph element, get that one, not the first one. I mean, if you really want to. Hey jQuery, I want all input elements with text as the type attribute. So all input elements. That means that's the descendant. If I go back up here for EQ, it says the element at index n within the selected set. So, for example, let's say I want the set of all. When I do this, right? I say all. If I just did this piece from here to here, not this piece here, but from this piece, from the p tag, from the numbers to the p tag, it would say all paragraph tags that are contained within facts, right? Come in, my friend. I'm recording you now. That's it. Thank you so much. My turn next. My turn next time. Thank you. There's an excellent professor. If you want Linux, he's the man, right? He's helped me a lot too, Mr. Barbaros. Okay, so let's go back. So what I'm saying here is, it's saying, hey, take the third index. So 0, 1, 2 would be the third one, right? The third element in the set of all elements, all p tags that I'm going to get back. Remember, with jQuery, remember we talked about this, I get a set or an array of elements that it comes back. It's not just one, I'm getting all. So I'm saying get all elements, all p tags inside of an ID, a div tags that contain an ID of FAQ. Right? Here's another one. All text elements, all input elements with the text as the type. Yes. The third paragraph, the third descendant, the third paragraph descendant. Ooh, that's good. Okay, here's other methods. Next, right? So get the next sibling of an element or the first sibling of the specified type if the parameter is coded. So in other words, what this means is I want to look at the next sibling, the next paragraph, or the next one. Here's some good examples. Some stuff that we use commonly. These are common examples. So I'm looking at a tag that has an ID of image, right? And I want to look, so that means all tags, not just one, all tags that have an ID, all elements that have an ID of image. And then I want to think about this. I want to get the source, the value from the source element. So I want to get basically the path of the image. That's what I'm looking for here, the path of all images. And I'm going to get an array of all image paths. That's what it's going to be. So get the value of the source attribute of an image, but all images. if every one of them has an image. If this was .image, so class all elements that have a class of image, get all of their attributes with the source attribute. That means get the value, the path that's inside the source attribute. That's what it means. Okay, and this is the setter. The setter usually has, as an example, key value pairs, like we've seen before. So instead of like how we did attribute, right? It would be example the source attribute, and then here's the image source path. This is the path, and I can set the image of an object. And this is the exact same way we did it with JavaScript, just the syntax is slightly different. Same thing with CSS. I can change the color to blue. We've done that already today. I can add a class to the h2 descendants of the fax element, right? That's what we're doing. So here's the fax element, right? Add class minus. Now, this actually should be together. Shouldn't be a space in here, right? But just the way I've coded it, right? So I want to add a class of minus, right, to the all h2 elements that are contained within another element that has ID of fax. So if I have a bunch of h2 elements, each one of them has a minus now as a class. A class gets added to all those elements. Why would you want to do these things, even with JavaScript? Because of CSS. So example, I want something like, I want to add a class when I click on a button, so that way something lights up or changes color or changes formatting or whatever, or disappears, as an example. There's different reasons for that. Hey, here's cool. This is like a for each. So this is saying this, okay? So my selector is, I'm gonna see if I can make this a little smaller so I can pop it up. Oop. No, that didn't help me. See if I can make this bigger. There we go. So if you notice this one, this is neat. This is, okay, I'm looking at the ID image list, right? I'm looking at all anchor tags inside another element that has an ID of image lists, right? So this is anchor tags, right? And I'm going to cycle through each of these for each of these anchor tags. That's what each of the elements that I'm going to return in the set. I'm going to do the following function, and this is going to be an anonymous function that I'm going to run. So for each of those things, I want to do something. So this is like a for each when I go each, and it's built in to jQuery. So I'm telling you, it's almost like it's a shorthand for me doing a bunch of lines. I can do this in 1 line. 2 lines, right, as an example, as opposed to like 5, 6 lines, right? And that's why people use jQuery a lot. And it makes it easier for people who don't know JavaScript very well, or even who want to have jQuery do it for you because it's tried and tested classes that have already been used. They've been maintained, and you're gonna be confident that you're gonna get back a good result from jQuery's classes, as opposed to you trying to reinvent the wheel and make your own, right? Like any other library for any other language. Event handling. Okay, event handling is like one of the main reasons people use jQuery. You can see some of these events are exactly how we do add event listener, right? So instead of using add event listener, you can do things like ready. This handler runs when the DOM is ready, document.ready, right? Or document.add event listener load on load. When the document loads, this is what this does. It's when the document is ready, right? So you can put in document.ready, so $ jQuery. Hey, wait for the document to be ready, and then do this function. What would I do? What is that doing for me? It's creating a closure, exactly like we have in here with my iffy. So if I go back in here in our code, I have my iffy, right? And what this does is it closes everything up, right? So I need this, plus I need something like this, window.addEventListener load. When I wait for the window to load, then I'm going to do something with it, right? The reason why we do this thing is, again, I want everything to load, my JavaScript to load before I actually do something. And not only that, but I also want all my HTML to load, so I have everything ready so I can apply JavaScript in there, right? Well, you can do that with 1 line in jQuery. You can say, hey, document.ready, and then do something, right? Here's something. The window runs when the user closes the browser window. So this is something that happens. So when I close the browser windows, when I unload the window, close the browser window, something happens. Maybe a pop-up, or it saves something, or redirects you somewhere else. Bad things, right? That's one. On error, if there's any kind of error, when an error occurs, I want almost like a handler to handle all errors that can occur. This is a really neat one, right? Let's use this one for a second. So I'll show you how it works. And by the way, there's some examples of how this works. So whatever the thing is, I can apply the event after it, right? And I want to see, there's another one here. There's another one for some shorthands. And bind, click. These are all event methods. Yeah, let's go back and I'll do one at a time. So let's do the error. So let's do the error handler. So how does it work? Again, imagine if we have no code hinting right now. So if I go $, and I want to do the .error, can I just do the error like this? What does this mean when I do this? Or can I even do it like this? Is that possible, right? And if it's true, it says, hey, on error, when there's any kind of error, it says takes a string, right, the message, and throws an exception containing it. So what's my message, if any, right? And it tells you there's a message, you know, for example, error, right? And then it returns jQuery. That's what it returns. So it actually returns something. Well, it's, you know, it says takes a string. This is, remember, it's listening for an error, right? That's the message, any, the message to send out. So the message is going to be error if something causes an error, right? Well, I can't do it this way, but what if I say something like document on document error? There's a problem with the document loading. Is that right? And it says, hey, bind an event handler to the error JavaScript event, right? Uh-oh, it says deprecated from version 1.8. What does deprecated mean? What does it mean? It's not being used anymore. And I'll tell you why it's not being used. It's not being used because we would rather do, for us to handle errors, there's different ways of error handling with JavaScript right now. But before, jQuery was used for this, right? Let's take this away. Document on load would be like this, document, right, ready. Document ready, run a function, a new anonymous function. So some kind of anonymous function that runs in here, hey, I'm ready, do something when my document's ready. That's how you write it, right? We'll talk about other ways to write that as well. So all these kind of events. How about a button click event, right? So I don't have a button, but let's put one in place. So let's say, as an example, on my index page, here's some basic events, right? You know, we'll make a button up here inside of our row, right? So inside of our, underneath the H1, we'll put a button. Like literally, it'll be a button like this, right? And we'll put in a button. We'll give it an ID because we still have to hook into it. We still got to find the button somehow, right? So we need to make it, put an ID of, I don't know, first button. Since we're using first H1, first button. Okay, cool. There's my button, and it's got to have some kind of text, right? So the text for my first button is going to have some kind of value, like, you know, click me. There we go. There's a click me button, right? And maybe the class, you know, because we're using Bootstrap. I can put a class for the button. So I'll say class for the button is equal to button primary. So it looks like a blue button. There we go. Blue button. Okay, good. When I click onto it, it's going to do something. All right. What is it going to do? Well, this is the same. This is like, you know, events 101, right? So I can do that. I can say something like this. Well, you know what? I want to target my button, is first button. Here's my first button. And then on click, what do I want to do? A new event handler. So I can do function, an anonymous function, or I can call a name function if I want to instead. And inside my click event, I can do something like this. I can say, well, you know what? I hate to say this, but I can make an alert, some kind of alert that says, you know, woohoo, right? I just click the button, right? So click me, it says woohoo, and that's what it does, right? So a very simple way of creating button event handling, or any kind of clicking anywhere on the page, right? And if I was to run this thing, so if I run this thing in terminal really quickly, so liked server, on top, there we go. Here's my hello world, and I'm going to go to my home. Oh man, where's my button? I can get my home, but I don't understand. Where's my hello world, but no button? How come? Right? Well, first of all, let's see what's going on, right? So if I go back in here, right? And if I look at my console, I got a bunch of objects, right? Blah, 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 right? These are my objects. And if you remember what I did before is I said, here's my Tom at example.com. It's loading from the page, right? All these things. But I got no button. And if you notice, it says loading, loading, loading. Look what it says, loading, loading, loading. Why does it say loading, loading, loading? Where's that coming from? My home page there, my paragraphs page. Oh, man. What's going on? How come it's doing that? Right? It says uncaught type error, cannot read property, has attribute of null. Well, because remember, we don't have certain things on the page. We're not switching between pages right now. All we're focusing on is one page. So that makes sense. There's projects, right? If I go to home, it says global shortcut JavaScript 1.9. Oh, there's my hello world. It finished loading. How come it's telling me I got to load, 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 load? Where is that coming from? Well, my friends, right? We just loaded jQuery mobile, remember? And jQuery UI. And that can cause a bit of some trouble. Let's get rid of those. So first of all, this is my first button. And my index.html is not saved. So let's save that. And save this. Now we should be able to see a difference. If I go back to here, here's my click me button. Click me, hello, woohoo, right? But why does it say loading? Why does it do this? Why does it go loading, loading, loading? How come it does that? Where's that loading thing come from? You'd be surprised, right? So let's get, if I took care of that on my index.html, let's go back to my index.html for a second. And if I took care of this jQuery mobile stuff, I get rid of this, because jQuery mobile is packed full of other stuff we don't need. We just put it on there to show you how you use it, right? jQuery UI won't give you that. But if I go back and I save and I go back here now, do I still get the loading? You see anywhere? Right? jQuery mobile gives us that loading because what happens is it simulates what it looks like to put together a page, right? And it's just an API that we're going to use. So we're not going to use this right now, but click me, this is the button, and how easy it was to make it. 2 seconds, we made a button, we have an event, and it does something, right? But the amount of code we're talking about is fairly small. To do the same thing in JavaScript, plain old JavaScript again, Podge, plain old JavaScript, right? We would do something like this. We would have to make some kind of document.getElementById, right? And then, which is a little harder to use than click. That's a lot easier to type. It's more error prone. So remember, this is how it used to be. First out, and I don't do the hashtag. I just go first button. I'm targeting the first button, and I'm saying instead of the click event, I go add event listener or on click, one of the two. The on click event was newer. If I go on click, this is the equivalent, and then you put in a function. Sorry, I got to make it equivalent. Add event listener is a little harder, and the same thing. So, or this. I don't know, for you, for me, it looks the same. I'm so used to JavaScript that I don't need jQuery, right? But for some people, when they look at it and they go, I want to, for non-programmers even, some people who want to be able to, who know CSS, and they want to use JavaScript just like CSS works, jQuery is your answer. jQuery is beautiful that way because it works almost exactly like JavaScript does when it comes to selectors. And that's the key, this piece, right? But I have to say that jQuery becomes very useful when it comes to Ajax, which we'll come to in a second. All right, let's go. Let's continue with the PowerPoint. So we're going to get rid of this. We don't need this piece. By the way, if you did both, I'm curious. I want to put a question out there. If I did both button event handlers, what would happen? I have an event handler for the button right now. I use jQuery for the event handler, right? An anonymous function. If I made another one, right? Would only one fire? Would both trigger? What would happen? Really? Let's do that. You know, now that I asked the question, I'll put it back. All right. So here's the same thing. First button, right? First button, and let's do another alert, right in here that says second alert. Let's just say, right? Let's see which one happens first. Do they happen at the same time? Like what happens, right? Save. And if I go back to the page, right, and it's refreshed our, if I click the button now, what happens? Woohoo! What happened to the second alert? Well, did this, and then did I save it? I saved it, right? How come? On click, I'm clicking on my first button, right? So I'm saying get an ID with this. Okay, now let's get rid of this for a second, okay? Just to show you. So I'm going to get rid of this. Doesn't matter. All right, let's check this out. Click. What happened? I don't get anything, right? So is there something wrong here? Is something that I need to do differently here to do the alert? Because is it finding, first of all, the first button click event, right? Why not? Well, it doesn't matter. First button's here, right? We don't care about the other page. All we care about is the index page. Why is it not seeing this thing? Is there a problem with the code? Okay, let me write it differently for you so you can see it a little differently. The stuff that you're used to. So document.getElementID first button dot add event listener, click, right? And we're going to have an event, which is an anonymous function, right? Just like we did before. And I'll split this over a couple of lines so you can see it like this. Okay, the same thing because it doesn't matter, right? And here's my event, and we'll see a console.log just to see what happens. Clicked. If it even gets there. So save document.getElementID, and let me bring up the console so you can see what's happening. And I click it and clicked. That's good. So how come if I said the alert? Let me put the alert back. Alert, and we'll say click me. Clicked. Do the alert at the same time. So here's my alerts. I go back and I click me, and the alert comes up. Clicked, right? Okay, now let's put the jQuery back. Hold on a second. So I'm going to do both. So I got my jQuery event here and my add event listener here, and we'll go back and click me. I go woohoo and clicked. So both fire at the same. Both fire one after the other. It really depends on when they get registered. I registered this one first. This one's going to trigger first. I register this one second. This one's going to trigger second. But I can have multiple events tied into or bound, is what we like to say, to a single element, whatever it is. Right? Now, how come the other one didn't work? How come I couldn't do .onClick? No, there's nothing to do with that, right? How to do an onClick? Well, normally what you would see something like this. Var, that's right, the right way. The first button, right, is equal to document.getElementID. Hold on, let's see if we can do this. Document.getElementID, first button. And instead of doing this all in one line, remember document chaining, right, or method chaining? We would do something like this: first button dot on click, right, and then on click do something. Here's my look what it says. Here's my mouse event, mouse event. What are you going to do? Or right on click, if I hover over it, it says put a mouse event in there, right, and then do something with it. On click, do something else. What do I do? Can I put an event handler on it like this, or do I have to make some kind of event handler? So first button on click, do something. Like, for example, anonymous function, right? And if I look at it, I'm doing the wrong thing here. I'm not getting any kind of code hinting to tell me that I'm doing it wrong, right? And if I do an alert, this is the same thing. Or let's do a console log first. So let's see if this works. Console.log. And we'll say, clicked. Right? So we'll see if this works, because it's the same. I'm just rewriting it in a different way. So I do this piece first, and then I do my first button on click. All right. So, oh wait, look what it says. First button on click is not a function. Right. First button on click, not a function. I'm trying, right? But it's not a function. It just says the on click event. So how do I use the on click event? So if I go to JavaScript on click, you guys remember? Never did that, by the way. We've always done with JavaScript. We've always done see event object on click is equal to function. Oh, see the equal sign, equal to function, right? That's the way you write it. We wrote it wrong. We wrote it this way, right? Which is not the right way. Okay. So if I go back, what it really looks like is this. It's equal to anonymous function. Get rid of this one. We could have left a bracket in there, by the way. Anonymous function, here's my console log clicked, right? So if I go back to this, and if I click it, you can see woohoo, and it says clicked in the console. So this is equivalent to this. on click, click, and the other one too, the document.element by the document thing. So if I was going to write this in one line with JavaScript, I would write it like this. Dot on click is equal to function. And let's just put this in 2 lines just so you can see it. So on first button let's get rid of this. We don't need the first button anymore because we're not going to use it anymore. So it'd be like this. First button, get element by ID on click, do this function. And if you notice, if I click onto it, it does this, and down here it gives me clicked.
So then why is the previous one doesn't work?
Which one? The dot on click and put it in brackets? It's not supposed to work like that.
Like,
We think it works that way, but it doesn't work like that, right? Yeah. Event listener works. It did work. So here I'll do another one just for you, since you're saying you didn't see it, right? So document. Actually, I'll just take this whole thing for a second, and we'll use the event listener. So these are three events, the same thing, right? One with jQuery, 2 with JavaScript, just so that we're clear. Because this is very important. Add event listener. And we're looking for the click event. You're being more explicit here. I'm looking for the click event. You can ask for any kind of add event listener is more for generic listeners. You can make your own too. And then with an internal function, right? Here's my internal anonymous function, right? And in my anonymous function, I can just do the same thing. Instead of a console log, we'll say third event. And this one will be second event. I can show you that fires in order. There it is. So this is my first event, the alert, on console, second event, and then third event. All right, so there's 3 things. Refresh, click, there's my alert, and then when I go down the console, second event and third event. They all work, right?
What was the difference between the code that you wrote and it doesn't create any alert?
The first code that was wrong, I had the close brackets like this, and I put the function inside there. That was why it didn't work. So understand this? So events can be handled in 3 different ways here. One with 2 with that I've shown. Actually, there's a third way. You can write it inline in your HTML, which sucks. Don't do that. But you could do that, right? But the right way to do it is through JavaScript, either through the on, whatever the method, whatever the event is, or add event listener, which I recommend. Add event listener is way better. It's a better way to write it. It's more clear in terms of what it does and contextual, and allows us to write our own events, make our own types of events we can name later on. We can make our own. Instead of click, we'll call it something else. Now, we're not going to get there in this course because that's an advanced feature to write your own dispatcher, but it can be done. All right, so event handling is kind of one thing that that jQuery does for us, but it reminds us a lot of the on-click events or the on events. But in saying on-click or on whatever, you can see that these are the most common ones, like mouse enter, mouse over, mouse out, right? So this can do like hover effects for mouse or that kind of stuff, right? Here's an example. So what am I targeting here? I'm targeting all input boxes, input elements, right, that have text as the type. When I double click on them, then something happens. And it tells you this. This is a handler for double click event of all text boxes that clears the clicked box. That's what it does. The value becomes clear, right? A handler for the hover event of each image element within a list. So here's a list. Here's the all image elements. When I hover over it, that's the mouse hover event, right? Then I perform this function. What does it do? It gives me a little alert. And then, well, look at this. I do 2 things. And here's something to note too. See how there's one function, there's another function? That's one thing that jQuery does really nicely. I can chain as many functions in here as I want. One thing and then another thing, and it triggers all the functions that are part of the list. That's pretty good. Well, let's try it out. Here, let's show you how it works. So an example would be, I want to do my first event. Here's jQuery. So my first event, and then this is my anonymous function. Let's do another anonymous function. This is what they're saying. So I do another anonymous function. Notice if I do this, it says, in my handler, it says, I'm looking at another one. It says, I can put it as many jQuery event objects as I want, right? Execute each time the event is triggered. So let's do something else. So we'll say another anonymous function. Oops. And inside my anonymous function, I'm going to do something else. So the first one, it's going to do an alert. And the second one, it's going to say console.log first event. So we can see if we can do both. And they're going to be 2 separate functions that are firing, right? There's this one. So if I do this, if I go click on the console and click me, you can see first event, second event, third event, right? And there are these ones, these functions, anonymous functions. I'm going to put them so you can see them. There's what the first one, there's the second one in a list, right? And there's the third one. If I just let's organize this for you so you can see it all. Format the code. There we go. This is what it would look like. Here's my first one. Here's my second one, and I can put as many of them as I want, right? Let's do the same thing with on click. Oh man, can't do that. How about add event listener? Could I add additional functions with add event listener? I do my first one, maybe I can do a second one. Yeah, let's do that. Function, and we'll do another anonymous function in here, another callback function with this one, and we'll say, fourth event, right? Let's see if that works. All right, so do it, response. Oh, for a second, where's the fourth one? Didn't trigger. So you can see that this is one thing that jQuery can do for us that JavaScript in this form cannot do, right? And the question is, should it do it, right? Like, if I click onto it, does it do for second, third, and fourth? No, but this does beautifully. This does two events at the same time, no problem. All right, let's go back to the code. So this is some reasons why we use jQuery. jQuery allows us to do a lot of different things. Here's something. Bind. If I want to use the bind method, that's a JavaScript thing, eh? Bind and unbind. It kind of like allows us to bind events. It says an event to a handler, right? It's a little different than using on click or one of those things, right? So here's the event type, and then here's the handler. And there's some good examples of being able to do that. So example will be this. Here's the bind event, the bind method, right? Watch. I can say, well, bind click, right? So how do I attach an event handler to an event with bind, right? Here's clear click, right? There's clear click. And I want to attach click to the clear click method. So on click, do this. That's what it does. This is like doing add event listener, right? And this is the shortcut method. Here's click, on click, clear click. Clear click is this one. So you're actually talking about a named function that we're using here. We're just naming a named function in here. Again, I'm just pointing these out because these are very common things. Here's unbind. I want to take away. You know what that is? Remove event listener. That's what this is. Unbind, remove event listener. More or less. I have to qualify that because it's not exactly the same. Okay. Here's something that we're going to do for effects. If I want to do something with jQuery, one of the reasons why we use jQuery is for animation and those kinds of effects as well. And I think this is something we should think about. For example, show and hide are the two most popular ones. What do they actually do, show and hide? Built in, what show and hide does is it does something like this. Set attribute, right? Or CSS.style, which is the same way, or style.css, and we want to save the display, set it to none. That's what this hide does. So it sets the display of this thing, or so this one, to hide, it says to none. If this one, the show, sets display to block. That's what it does. So it's like using CSS to display or remove something, okay? Toggle, it says display or hide the selected item. Toggle doesn't do exactly what this says it does. And you got to watch the toggle event because what it's telling you that it does here, it doesn't really do. Fade in and fade out does do those things. You can fade in and fade out an effect, right? And again, this is all done with pure JavaScript or jQuery, right? So let's take a look at this one. Here's an example, right? So I've got this h1 tag that says, hey, temporary under construction. By the way, we never do that anymore. Please never put temporarily under construction on your web page, right? Just don't put your web page up, right? If it's temporary construction, that's really bad. Under construction, you ever see that anymore, right? No, that's an old thing we used to do in the 90s, right? Don't put a page up. Here's another rule. Number one rule, right? Don't put a page on your site that's broken, okay? Just don't put it on. Don't show the page, all right? If the page is not working, don't put an about page with nothing in it, right? And say under construction. That's just dumb, right, nowadays. It's really bad, right? Don't use those kind of things. But here's an example. Here's my startup message. And what it says is fade out 5,000 something. What's this 5,000? It's 5 seconds. This is in milliseconds, right? So I want to fade out my start message in 5 seconds. Let's do the same thing with our H1 tag. We'll just do that same example here. So I'm going to go into, again, I'm just using jQuery. Let's get rid of some of these, because we don't need these. And I was just using these as examples so you can see, right? And we don't need this. Just I'm going to get rid of this whole click event thing. But we have this thing here, this first H1, and I want to use the fade out effect, right? So I'm going to go, all right, well, hey, I got my first H1. I want you to tell me, should I do it this way? Right, dot fade out, and then in 5,000 milliseconds. Here's my duration. That's an option, right? This is one of my overloads. This is one thing I can do. So 5,000 milliseconds, let's make it shorter. So make it like 2,000 milliseconds. So in 2 seconds, it's going to fade out. Okay, this is what it does. So let's check this out. I'm going to go back to my page, and it's gone already. Let's refresh. There it is, and then it fades out, right? And it's gone. Actually, removes it from your layout. Do I really want that? Something removed from my layout? That means my layout's gonna change all the time, right? That sucks, guys. But could you do it if you really wanted to? Yes, you could. And I can do that with a button. Well, you know, if you don't have the button, it'll fade out. If you don't click it fast enough, the button's gone. I don't know why you'd want to do that. But I want to mention something to you guys so you understand. Again, I'm using event chaining, right? One thing you can do with with fading in and fading out, and if I go back to this, right? Notice that I'm using the first H1 tag over and over again. Now this tells me that, you know, there's a good chance here that I would do something like this. var, right? $, first H1. This is a good case for this, all right? Where normally you don't have to do this. So is equal to, I need some kind of thing like first heading, right, is equal to, you know, first H1. I want to probably do that. And then I can do something like replace first heading without doing a query again. So I don't have to keep querying the heading. I can do this too, right? That's perfectly acceptable, as opposed to kind of do it, right? But here's something else that is even easier to do, right? If I wanted to do both of these effects, right, in jQuery says, the style for jQuery says, don't do that at all, just do this, right? Just do this. Just do this, right? That's what it says to do. Right, so it chains all the things all at once, and it does them in order. And usually the way we write this stuff is usually like this. We kind of put it with a dot in front, right, before underneath the effect. So this is our effect. If I was going to format this, it would look a little bit like this. So here's our first H1. You know, change the text to hello world, change the color to red, and fade it out in 2 seconds, right? And if you don't like the fade out, you want to move it around. It says fade out or slide down. Now, what does slide down do? Slide down does something totally different. Let's try slide down. So slide down, and let's do it in 2 seconds again, so we can see it, the effect come down. Right, so let's refresh the screen, and then you can see that it's going to slide down in 2 seconds, it says, right? Well, I don't see it sliding anywhere. Did I save everything, first of all? Yeah, I saved. Slide down is there. What about fade out and slide down like it says? Fade out. Okay. And I'll do that in 2 seconds. And I'll slide down, and I'll do the other one. So there it is, and slide down actually shows it again, right? That's why it didn't have it. It has to be from nowhere. It has to come down. Hey, here's a question. Do I ever want to use slide down? That's pretty darn ugly, right? Nowadays, we don't use that stuff, right? Because this is what we used to do with jQuery. Can you do it? Yes, these little animation effects. Should you do it? Absolutely not. I would never use these things, and because why? It's not responsive. I mean, it can work on a responsive web page, but it breaks your layout. And nowadays, at least for now, we don't want our stuff to break our layout. We want to keep our layout intact. If I've paid a web designer a lot of money to make a beautiful layout, and then I use a JavaScript effect to break his layout, why would I do that? Especially JavaScript effects that are kind of cheesy, like fade out or whatever. Like, I don't need to do that unless there's a reason for that. A good reason for fade in and fade out is if I want some kind of, for example, I want my menu to kind of fade in as opposed to pop in, right? That's a totally different thing, right? So I have some kind of menu that when I click on the menu, it fades in. That's a good effect. And you can make it quick. You don't make it like 2 seconds. You make it like 500 milliseconds, half a second. It fades in. It looks a little nicer. And you can make it ease in and ease out. All those kind of changes are nice effects that you want to make, and you have to choose when to use them. In this particular usage, the way I'm using it, great. Fade to, that's a totally different thing. So fade to, so it says it takes 5 seconds to fade to 0.2, and 0.2 means 0.2 opacity, so it's going to be almost completely transparent. And then fade to, after that, 1,000 in 1 second is going to fade to full opacity again. Let's try this out. So instead of fade out, we can use fade to. So fade to. And if I open it up, it says the duration is the first piece, and the opacity is the second number. And what happens when it's complete? That's the third one. What happens when it's complete? I can run a function when it's complete. So when it's finished doing it, do something else, like an alert. We're done. One of those kind of things. And so that's really good that you can do a callback function to do that, right? So fade to, again, we want to make a thing. So let's make it 1,000 milliseconds. It'll fade to 0 point, or make it 0. We'll fade it to 0, and then we'll fade back up to fade to. We'll make it go back up in another second. We'll make it go right back to 1, right? And we'll do a callback function. That's what this means. And the callback function, we can do something, and after it's all done, we can say solid again, alert, which is really ugly, solid again, right? So first we're in transparent, and now we're going to go to solid. Let's check this out and see how it works. So, oh, there it is, solid, we're too fast, right? So refresh, so fade out and fade back in, boom, right? Why would you want to do such a thing? You probably won't. I'm just demonstrating that it can be done. Fade out, fade back in, and bam, right? The callback function will trigger. The idea here is that you can make your own special effects. Some people use Jquery for making games, right? Because Jquery, you can do a lot of little effects. This is just one thing, fading in and fading out. You can also do animation-like effects. Okay, yes?
So what that one is second one, what is the other one?
How opaque an object is. Opaque means, is it fully solid or transparent, right? Actually, other places call it alpha transparency. So you might see alpha instead of opacity. Also, transparency is they're all the same. Transparency, alpha, opacity. It's just 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It means the same kind of thing, right? Except the opposite. Fully transparent means, right? Zero opacity. That's what it means. 100% opacity means, zero transparency. It's the same thing, just the opposite, right? You're talking about the same thing. You can see through an object or not, right?
So it's this way we can use to inject the text whenever the mouse hover up and down.
If you want to, but it's really ugly. You're going to break your layout. You don't want to do that. Why would you want to do it? You never want to break your layout. Okay, the bottom line. When you do your design, these effects, I'm showing you how you can do them. Should you use them though in this particular context? No. I'm just showing you how you can do it.
So we can make a loop also, so whenever user go up, down,
Yes, you can do all kinds of stuff with this. Everything is possible. I mean, this is just giving you possibilities, and that's what I wanted to show you here. The stuff that you can do with jQuery. Let's keep moving. So we've got lots of pages to go through. Animate. This is one that we can definitely do. So here's our CSS for a, if you notice, for an H1 heading. Notice that it has an opacity already of 0.2. My animate method, what it does, it tells me my font size is going to be going to 275. My opacity is going to go to 1. Now it says left. Notice that it's going to be from minus 175 pixels, which means from the left, it's minus 175, which means it's off screen. It's going to come on screen to the right. That's what's happening here. And it's going to do all this in 2 seconds. So it's going to move an object, which is the H1 header, from the left all the way to the right in 2 seconds, right? And then it says, here's another one. Here's an H2. I'm going to animate this one. The font size is going to 275. My opacity is going to be 1. This is another header. It's going to be to the left plus 175, which means it's going to go this way all the way to the right, right? Beyond where it is. And then it's going to do a fade in and a fade out, right? You can chain all these things. You can actually put jQuery inside of jQuery and nest everything together. So animation is kind of cool if you want to move something. So we can do that. Let's do the same kind of effect. So I got this kind of stuff again, right? My H1 tag. Let's get rid of this. So we'll leave the CSS tags there. And then I want to animate as an example. And you can see that the options are right here. So it says the properties of an object, right? And it's an object. So I'm going to kind of put together the properties. Notice that I have to put in an object like this, the object notation. If I go back to you can see that that's what it's there. There's an object that it takes. It takes an object here, right? And the first one I can start hitting things like font size or opacity, right? So if I go opacity, notice I'm not getting code hinting here, right? Why would I not get code hinting? Because I'm inside of an object, and my object is whatever object I want. So I'm going to go to opacity of 0.2 as opposed to 1. And what else can I do within within here? I mean, I can move it to the left or to the to the left. I'm going to go change my left. I'm going to go to the left means from the left side. I'm going to do something. So start measuring from the left side. How many pixels do I want to go to the right? I'm going to go plus 175. Like it shows, or plus 200. Let's go plus 200. I can do that properly. There we go. Okay, that's what and then I have to mention in here after the thing how long it's going to take. What's the duration? Notice that duration is highlighted here. So first I do something, and then I need a duration with a number of how long it's going to be. Let's make it so it takes, I don't know, 3 seconds. So it's going to move slow. Right? So save, and let's go back here, and let's see it start moving. So it fades out, and then it should start moving to the right, right? And if it's 200 is not enough, right? Notice that it fades out, stays faded out, right? Let me just refresh that for a second. So it just fades out. Right now it's doing the fade out thing, right? But I want it to move, right? And if you notice, well, I have to put the quotations in there for left. Let's do that. So what I should do is put quotations in there, right? And now, it should fade out, and actually it should have done the same thing. But if, let's say, make it, and well, you know why? Because our CSS doesn't have a left value. If I go back to the example, you can see that in our example, our CSS has a left of minus 175, right? So I'd have to kind of set the left to something. Right now it's not set. So let's go and do that. So we can say CSS color red. Here it is, CSS. And I'm going to say left, right? And then we're going to set it to minus 175, right? Let's see what happens now, right? Or we refresh, and it didn't do what I wanted to do, right? I just want to make sure it's correct. Oh, minus 175. We'll make it, put it in brackets again. Because remember, it's oh, that's correct. 175 pixels. Are you sure? Maybe I missed it. See nothing moving anywhere, right? Opacity just changed the transparency to opaque. That's what it does. But I need some CSS. Chances are, if I was to go to my app.css, which is under here, and as I mentioned, the H1 tag, here's the first H1. And if you notice, if I don't put a left value, here's left. If I don't put a left value of minus 175 in here, right, just to mimic what we're doing here, it won't give me the effect, right? Also, the position. Sorry, the other thing I missed is, notice my position is relative. I have to put all that in there too. I could do that with code too, but let's just do that. So position is relative, right? That's just an option. That's it. And if I was to do that, if I want to do that all with code, right? So let's get rid of all these two things. So position is gone. And let's go my left 175 as what it should be. I want to do it all with code, right? So because instead of using JavaScript or CSS, we're going to do this. We're going to say red, color red. Let's say also, remember, CSS doesn't care when you put it in. So we'll say position. And then we'll say relative. Same thing, right? Minus 175. And then we'll save it. And you can see that it moves the same way, right? And if 200 is not enough, let's make it so it's like 500, so you can see how it really goes. So you can see it speeds up, and you can see how it moves to the middle, where it's hello world, right? And when it gets there, when it's done, after it's complete, the movement, remember, we have that option as well. So on complete, when it's done, we can make a callback function. So what happens when it completes? Here's the callback function from where it completes. When it's done doing its movement, well, you know what? I want to do some other jQuery in here. And we're going to say, for the same thing, first H1, if I can do it properly. There we go. then we want to fade to fade in. How about we do fade in? Okay. And we'll do a fade in with, I don't know, 500 milliseconds. So really fast, a really quick fade in. So we'll do that back. So we'll go back here, and then a really quick fade in back. Oh, what happened? How come it didn't fade in? Did I not save? How about a fade to instead of a fade in? Fade to, because it's already faded out. So it's already faded in. I'm not telling it to do properly. So I'm going to say, what is it going to take? 500 milliseconds to go to 1. And make sure we're targeting the right thing. Yes, we are. And there it is, right? So refresh. So you see that the effects, it goes from here to there, and then when it fades out, and then bam, it fades back in, right? And if I want to make it go faster, because this isn't fast enough, right? As an example, this isn't fast enough for me because it takes, as an example, how long? 3,000 milliseconds. Let's make it do it in 1,000 milliseconds. So to really mimic how long it's going to take, right? So let's refresh that so you can see it. Bam, right? It was kind of shaky. Did you notice how shaky it was? Right? It's kind of chunky, but it works. You can make effects like that, right?
So while like using these kind of functions like we can use the image over image also.
You can do all kinds of stuff. There's no limit to what you can do. Whatever your imagination gives you, you can do.
So how we can like have one image and placed over another image? One image placed over.
Okay, let's think about this. How would I do a proper carousel? How would I do a carousel with JavaScript? Forget jQuery for a second. I want to have a bunch of images, right? Think about this. I want to do a carousel or some kind of, thing that moves around my screen. How do I do it? One, my images are all on the screen, but all of them are hidden. Every image is hidden, right? Okay, but the first one, I have my first image. And then over time, what it does is it goes to the second image, hides the first one, shows the second one, and I fade in or fade out. So basically, they're not off screen. All I'm doing is doing one of these. So they're just together. They're all layered on top of each other, right, as an example. And then what I do is just do this. Show one, hide the other, right? That's all I'm doing. And I do it, I can swap it like this, so it kind of pops up if I want to, or I can fade one out and fade the other one in. Right? What's it going to stop me from doing that? It's on the same space. They're all layered on top of each other. Yes. You can do anything you want. When you move your mouse, you can do the mouse move event. When the mouse moves, as an example, you can swap things out. If you click on an image, it swaps the other image out. It's whatever you want to do, right? And all of the carousels are some kind of variation of that, where you have a certain amount of timing, we're using an animation or something that basically takes how long it takes for it to fade in or fade out, or move in from one side. So let's say, for example, I want to have a frame, and then what I'm going to do is when I leave the frame itself, the way I view it is that it truncates anything that's outside of the frame. So my image, when it goes outside of the frame, it stays in my div tag. So anything outside, it doesn't expand to fit. It just truncates it, so you don't see it when it's outside. So basically, what's happening is it's just a trick. The image is still there, and it's in a long group of images that are one next to the other, right, in a row. And all I'm doing is showing the first one. And then when I move all of them to the left, right? So they seem that they're moving in, but actually it's not happening. What's really happening is they're moving from way over here, outside of the screen, into view. That's what's happening. And then I see the image, and then finally it moves to the second one. So now this one's off screen, right? Meanwhile, there's two. There's one off screen here on the left side and one off screen on the right side. Then I keep moving to this one, right? So all I'm doing is moving the images so that they're further off screen. It's just a trick. It looks like that I'm sliding images in. And what happens when I go back to the first one? You even see it go back. Sometimes you see it go back to the thing, blah, 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 and it goes back to the first one again. And then it goes to the next one. And then you have a little timer. That's what happens. A little timer, a little line that goes like this to show you how long it takes for the next image to come out, and then the next one. If you click on the image, it stops moving. Right? See those images? And then if you click on the image, it's actually an anchor tag that takes you to the page that you're looking at. That's what it is. Is it difficult to do? No, it isn't. It takes time for us to code it, though, but we can totally do it. We can get a few images, right? And we can make it happen, right? It's not a big deal. The challenge is to understand these things. That's what jQuery allows us to do, and it's a shortcut for what we can do with JavaScript. Again, once you take that away, when it takes many, many lines for JavaScript to do this stuff, right? jQuery is really good at that because the library is already built for us. And like I said before, Bootstrap uses jQuery because it's a very successful library. Yes?
For example, the left value is increasing gradually. How can you get the value of this left in every instance?
What do you mean?
I mean, for example, your hello world is moving.
Yes.
So every movement, if I have to see the value of the left of this hello world.
Oh, you want to see it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's more difficult to do that, right? Because what you're trying to do is see what the value is, the current value of. You can do it though. You can use a getter to see what the current value of the CSS property is and print it out. But the challenge is you're doing it as you go. So let me show you. So what you're saying is during my animation, right? I want to have some kind of function that runs during my animation. Not incomplete. This happens incomplete. This part. You want to get the value of what's happening here as it moves. Well, you're going to have another thing that keeps track of that, like another event that basically keeps track, another function that keeps track of that reports on that thing. So when it moves, when the actual thing moves around or whatever, or it changes, every second it reports back to you. It prints out to you in a loop, right? What the position is. How fast do you want the reporting done? Every second? Every half a second? 60 frames per second? How fast do you want it do you want it to tell you the positions? Because it's going to move through every one of those pixels, right? So if I'm moving 500 pixels, which I'm doing right here, from the left to the right, 500 pixels, if that's true, right? If I'm doing that, then how often do you want me to report the position? How often? Like every 5 seconds, every 250 milliseconds, every 100 milliseconds? How fast do you want me to report the position to you? Because there's going to be every point, right? So that's the thing you have to think about. And then you write another timer, and in your timer you say, every interval in the timer, I want you to present the position of my first H1, and you can use jQuery for that. Let's do it just because you're asking. So again, if I use a set interval, right? No, not immediate. Set interval. Code hinting is good, and code hinting can be bad. Set interval says, what's the handler for my interval? So I'm going to make an anonymous function. So my anonymous function is going to trigger, right? This is what's going to trigger on every interval. Then the next thing is, what's the timeout, if any? How often is the interval going to happen? So let's say every 100 milliseconds. And it's going to keep going, right? It's not going to clear the interval. This is going to keep going forever, right? So every interval, I want to know the position of my first H1. How do I get to know that? I want to use the getter to get my CSS value, right? Okay, so I'm going to say $, right? First H1, and I want to use CSS, right? Instead of the setter, I want to use the getter, which is give me my left position. What's my left value, right? Okay, cool. This is good. Now I want to console log that, right? So console log the position of the CSS to the left every 100 milliseconds. Right, let's see if that works. So, you can see that worked, right? Let's try it again. Watch. Right, see how that works? So I use a timer to tell me what the position is from the left of this thing. Based on, and by the way, the left is relative to the left of my frame, which is my div tag. Make sense? I'm running a loop, an interval. By the way, it's still running, right? It can run forever until I clear it. Let's get rid of that. That was weird, but we did it just because you asked. I'm going to pause for a break in a second, but let me just go to the next pieces just to make sure we're getting through. I got lots of questions. I'm happy with the questions because the questions mean you're interested, but we also have to keep moving. Chained animations, you can do one animation after the other, right? This is something to note, right? So chaining is one thing. Queuing is another. This is something totally different, where one is queued to work after the other one. What does queued mean and what does chaining mean, right? So chaining means, okay, on click, when I click something, I want to animate this object. That's why I'm using this, right? I'm animating inside my function. This keyword refers to the function itself, which means this fax h1 tag, right? I'm going to animate. I'm going to change the font size so it's going to become bigger. My opacity is going to be 1, and I'm going to go from the left, which is plus equals 275 to the right, in 2 seconds. That's the first one. That's chaining. And then I'm going to animate. I'm going to change the font size back down to 175, and I'm going to move it back the other way around to 275 to the left in 1 second. So it's going to be much faster going this way, right? That's chained animations. Queued animations does the same thing, except it does one after the other, right? One is finished, and then the next one starts, right? Same idea, but they're slightly different in terms of how they perform, all right? We can use delays as an example to do stuff. For example, I want to delay 5,000 milliseconds before I fade out. That's pretty cool. That's like a timeout, right? Not an interval. I can delay 5,000 milliseconds and then do something else, right? This is really cool. And that delay stuff, this is all special effects, right? So I'm not going to go into that, how it works. This is really cool. Easing is awesome when it comes to special effects because we just made it go from the left to the right really quickly, right? Well, you can make it so that it accelerates. It goes really fast and then slows down at the end, right? To make it so it looks nice. Do you know what I'm saying? As opposed to how it goes right now. And here's an example. Well, that was really weird. My PowerPoint slide messed up. But here's an example of easings, example 1. So I have, it slides down as an example. And what I want to do is I want to slide down or slide up. And I use an ease out bounce or an ease in bounce. You can actually tell it what to do. Here's animate. And then I use at the end an ease in, right? Or an ease out. And there's different kinds of easings you can use, right? Like ease in and out kind of thing. And where do you get the easings, right? So this, it says jQuery provides only 2 easings, swing and linear. Swing is the default, and it's the animation that you usually want, right? Swing. And then there's the linear easing that you want, right? Okay, let's take a look at this for a second. We'll talk about the easings, right? Because when I go to these ones, ease out bounce or ease in bounce, these are the different kinds of ways we can use it, right? So I want to see if there's a ease out bounce. We'll try this out. And then it tells you how to do this, right? Ease out bounce. I'm not really happy with ease out bounce, but we'll try it. Ease out bounce. So fade to, blah, blah. And instead of when it's moving, this one right here. So there's the thing. And then before I do my callback function, I'm going to do an easing, right? Which is ease out bounce. Do this properly. Right? So an easing, there's the easing right here, right? What's the easing? And then on complete, we do this. All right, let's see how this works. So we'll go back to here, and we'll refresh and see what happens. Right? Ease out bounce. Again, really quick and dirty little effects that are built in, right? And if you want to find all the easings, again, I'm not going to go through each one of them, but if I go easings, jQuery, right? Then you can see the jQuery UI documentation for all this. Here's all the different ones. A linear easing means it's going to go the same speed. Swing is going to start slow and then move higher and then slow down again. Swing is very nice. Swing is like ease in and out, right? There's different ones. Ease in, out, quad. It goes this way, so it starts slow, and then it speeds up, and then it kind of slows down again. Ease out, quad. And there's different ones. There's different ways of doing it. Ease in and out, quart. This is really slow. So it goes slow, 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 and then it goes speeds up and then goes slow again, right? Or ease in, quint. This is just different formulas for doing the same thing. Okay, and there's different ways. This is ease in elastic. This is kind of cool. In ease in elastic. I'm gonna take this one for a second. We'll try this one. So copy. By the way, if you want to see what it looks like for each one of these things, if I want to see it, right? That's an example of what it does. See that? If I click on any one of these things, it'll show you what it does in terms of the timing, right? Just by clicking any of these things. See? Depending on what kind of effect you want. And then so they've kind of done the most popular kind of effects. Right? They're very different though. Right? This is swing, right? This is in ease in quad. How it slows down, see that? It looks very similar, but if you look, if you notice, see how that eased in and out? Ease in cubic. Right? So these effects create a little bit smoother animation as opposed to linear. Linear just does the same. It's the same in and the same out. It's very straight, right? So it's not as nice looking in terms of effect. So ease out, bounce. Let's try just swing. Swing is the default. So let's swing. Go back to here and refresh. You can see what swing does. Right? That's the default. I know you don't look excited about this stuff, but the reason why we're going through this is because this is one of the things that jQuery does really nicely for us. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll do more jQuery DOM manipulation.